All right, welcome to the first part of the class. Hopefully you've already watched the intro, you've been through the entire website, both the Connect website and also the Blackboard website. The general lectures, I want you to know one thing. They're kind of short overviews to help supplement what you're already doing. These lectures do not replace reading the book, and they certainly don't replace coming to class if you're in the traditional class. But we're going to get going here with our financial planning in action. All right, first off, when we think of personal financial planning, it's a process that we're going to go through to managing our money to try to achieve the greatest satisfaction we can out of our money. So in other words, we want to try to determine what makes us happy. If a brand new car does not make you happy, then you are wasting money on a brand new car. You want to travel, go to sporting events, go to concerts, then spend your money on that. If you really, really love new cars and you want a new car every 3 years and that brings you a lot of satisfaction, then buy a new car every 3 years, but you won't be able to do as much going to concerts, travel, etc. Okay? So when we look at a financial plan, your financial plan is kind of the noun. The financial plan is going to be a typed report that you turn in. Financial planning is the verb and the actions that you have to take to create the plan itself. So what is a financial plan? Well, it's a formalized report, right? We're going to have a structure to it. We're going to start off going over your goals. We're going to look at your income sheets, balance statements, and then we're going to do some projections. Where are we going to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and where do we want to be when we retire? All right? So we certainly have to summarize our current financial position. We also have to look at our needs. Are we going to school? Do you plan on buying a big house, and how are you going to fund that? Are you going to put your kids through school? Are you going to take off for a year after college and go backpack through Europe? Pretty much if you look at anything that's going to happen in your life for the positive, it has to be planned for and it has to be paid for. Whether that's a wedding, whether that's paying for school, whether that's braces for your kids or a new car, all those things need to be planned for and they also need to be paid for. So what are some advantages here to financial planning? Well, first we want to have increased effectiveness in obtaining and using resources. So what does that basically mean? Spend smart. Figure out what I want, figure out what the really good deals are, and then spend my money that way. I have a cousin. She loves to travel, and she travels all over the world. She's been to Africa 5 or 6 times. That's everything to her. She lives in an incredibly small little apartment in a not-so-good part of the neighborhood. She doesn't own a car. If she owns a car, usually it's been given to her, and she drives it for 5-6 months until it breaks down, and then she gives it to somebody else because all of her money goes into travel, and that's what brings her the best satisfaction. And so when she's doing planning, she's trying to figure out how can I get the best deals on travel. We also want you to have increased control of your financial affairs. So we want to set this up so that life doesn't happen to you. You're not sitting around in a passive situation where you get in this much money and there's this much demand for your money and you're somehow a victim in everything that happens to you and everything happens by happenstance. We don't want that. That is not a fun position to be in, to know that you're one paycheck away from being moved out, to think you have no control. So part of this class is going to be that we want you to seize control of your assets. How much money are you going to make? How are you going to spend that money? And then make active decisions. And one of the things that comes out of that is an awful lot of improved personal relationships, because money problems are incredibly stressful. They just are. If you look at divorce rates, for people married for 7 years or less, finances are the #1 reason stated for divorce. After 7 years, it becomes the #2 reason stated for divorce. And so certainly if we want improved relationships with our family, we want improved relationships with our spouse, with our kids, we want to be in control of our finances. We don't want to be like on a dog choke collar with our finances pulling us around. That does not make for a happy life. And one of the greatest things I hope you get out of this class and planning your finances is a sense of freedom. In other words, I don't have to worry about all this because it's all taken care of. You find out you're much, much more satisfied with a low mileage, used certified car and a house in a nice neighborhood and no financial worries instead of a brand new leased car and a house in a neighborhood you can't afford, and you know that every single month that goes by you're barely going to make it, and if you get fired, you're going to lose your house. One of the greatest satisfactions for me is to know that if my dean walked through the door over there and fired me, well, first I got tenure, so I'd go yelling to my union, but most people, if they're in that situation, they're in trouble. How are they going to make rent this month and certainly next month? It is very satisfying to know that if I got fired, I wouldn't have to worry about losing my house for over a year. Certainly, I'd probably cut back on cable. I certainly wouldn't be eating out nearly as much. But that huge, horrendous weight is lifted. And I've got a lot of friends, especially coming through the financial crisis that we, came through a little while ago. Their life is not fun. Even when they're making $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, they spend every penny of it. They play hard, they spend hard, and next thing you know, there's one little hiccup in their business, or they don't get their big bonus check, and ends up they can't make it, right? So that happens at all income levels. So what are the things that we're going to try to accomplish here? First off, we want to look at our individual life situation and our personal values, because personal finance is personal. So, what do you value? Do you value family? Do you want to spend a lot of time with family? Do you want to go on vacations with family? Are you going to tithe to the church? Are you going to do a lot of volunteer work? And so we want to get to your core values, and that has to be part of this overall plan and certainly plays a large impact in our finances. We also want to at least know what's going on in the economy. Now, as an individual, really not much I can do about the economy. The economy is going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. I have zero influence on the worldwide economy or the national economy. However, I can set myself up for success if the economy does well, and I can limit my downside if the economy does poorly. So we want to understand how those things work. How does outsourcing affect my job? How does inflation affect my job? How are interest rates going to impact me if I need to refinance my house? When we look at interest rates basically are the cost of money. If you go to borrow money, you're charged interest. The higher the interest rate, the higher the charges. And there's a lot of factors that go into interest rates, and we'll certainly be coming back to that. All right, one of the things I want to touch on here is about inflation. Inflation impacts all of our lives. And actually, a little bit of inflation is a really good thing. We want a little bit of inflation in the economy. That means there's demand for money, prices are going up, and what happens with inflation is it actually reduces your buying power. So let's say that a candy bar costs $1. And so here I have my candy bar and I have $1. I can do one of two things. I can buy that candy bar now and have it now, or I can save that $1. If there's no inflation whatsoever, I can take my $1, I can stick it under a mattress, wait a year, pull that dollar back out from under the mattress, and buy the same candy bar. However, with inflation, if inflation's running 3% and my candy bar costs $1 this year, next year it's going to be 3% higher, it's going to cost $1.03. So if I take my dollar and I hide it under the mattress, when I pull it out a year from now, I can no longer buy a candy bar. So what that does is it forces me to take that dollar and put it in the bank to get interest, to invest in bonds, to invest in stocks. So instead of the United States having a whole ton of money stuffed under a mattress somewhere in thousands and millions of homes, it pulls all that money out from under the mattress into the banking system so it can be loaned out to other people to buy cars, expand businesses, start new businesses, et cetera, and then hopefully I get more than just an inflation return on my money. Certainly when we look at inflation, if you have a fixed income, it can be devastating. And so we need to realize that and plan for that as part of our financial planning. If we hit 65 or 67 and retire on a fixed income, that money's probably not going to satisfy what we need 30 years from now when we're 95, 97 years old. And if right now you're in your 20s, a very good chance you'll live past 100, given all the new technology, given all the new medications, given some of the breakthroughs in growing new kidneys, trying to grow parts of pancreases. We're living longer and longer, and so our retirement at the same time is going to be longer and longer, and we have to account for that. The most common measure when they talk about inflation, they talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So the Consumer Price Index is basically just a big basket of items, right? It involves a house, a car, lettuce, peanut butter, hamburger, gasoline, bananas. There's hundreds of items in this like huge basket. And the government goes out and each month, each week, they track how much all those items cost, and then they see, did the items go up or down in general? And if prices are going up, then we have inflation, and then they report an uptick in inflation. Okay, the last thing we're going to cover in this chapter is goal setting. To do a good financial plan, you've got to have goals. For a business has to have goals if it's going to be successful. And so here's a few things of what effective goals should be. They need to be realistic. That does not mean that of all your goals, you're not dreaming, right? So if you're a musician or an actor and you want to perform live and you love stage and you want to win a Tony, there is absolutely nothing wrong with one of your goals being to win a Tony Award, to win some other award, to travel Europe and play. That's fine. But an awful lot of them need to be realistic. You can't say, okay, next year I'm going to make $1 million a year, and then set all your plans you're going to make $1 million a year, unless realistically there's a pathway for you to make $1 million. When we talk about realistic goals, for your project you have to have 50 goals. And so by realistic, but yet we still have to reach and challenge ourselves, if you set 50 goals and only obtain 10 of them, I would say your goals are too hard. Or you had a really, really bad year. Simultaneously, if you have 50 goals and you obtain all 50 of your goals, there's a problem with that. Odds are you set your goals way too low, or maybe for some reason you had a super phenomenal year and actually finished them. In my opinion, you should probably be completing around 80% of your goals. So if you have 50 goals set up, you should be accomplishing about 40 of them. And in that way, they're probably realistic and yet still obtainable. We also need our goals to be specific and measurable. One of the most common goals that I get is I want to spend more time with family. Okay, what does that mean? 1 extra minute a year with family? Talking on the phone? What is that, and how do I measure it? It's very hard to measure more time. Or I want to be a better student. How do I measure a better student? It's not I want to be a better student. It's I want to have a GPA of 3.5 this year. That I can measure. I want to go out once a week with my sister to lunch. That's measurable. So you look back and say, okay, out of the 52 weeks, we went out 48 times to lunch. Or we did this X number of times. The other thing that I see is the statement, I want to pay down my debt. Well, what does pay down your debt mean? Does it mean you owe $10,000 and 5 years from now you owe $9,999? Because that's paying down your debt. No, we want it to be specific, measurable, and certainly time-driven. I want to pay down my $10,000 credit card bill from $10,000 to $5,000 by the end of this year and have the entire balance paid off in 2 years. That's both specific, my credit card bill, it's time-driven, I've got my certain times, and I've also stated exactly what's going to happen there. The other thing that we need our goals to be is action-oriented. So in other words, these goals have to be set up for you to take action and you influence them. You influence your income, you influence your GPA. Whether you're a Laker fan or not, odds are you're not going to have too much influence on whether they win a world championship next year. Odds are they're not, unfortunately, but you cannot set a goal that says, I want the Lakers to win the world championship. There's no action that you're going to take to make that happen. Even though you think buying a seat and cheering really loud is going to get them to do it, odds are that's not going to happen. All right, so that's the end of our goals here for your project. You can look in your book. It talks about that you need to develop 50 goals, and they need to be specific and time-driven. All right, and that's all we're going to cover here for Chapter 1. Thank you.